No ladies. Akshipta, charmed. Atma, heart. Indriya, his senses. Strinam, of women. Asatinam, false. Cha, and. Mayaya, by Maya. Raha, in a solitary place. Rachitaya, displayed. Alapai, by the talking. Shishunam, of the children. Kalabhashinam, with sweet words. Translation. He gives heart and senses to a woman who falsely charms him with Maya. He enjoys solitary embraces and talking with her, and he is enchanted by the sweet words of the small children. Purport. Family life within the kingdom of illusory energy, Maya, is just like a prison for the eternal living entity. In prison, a prisoner is shackled by iron chains and iron bars. Similarly, a conditioned soul is shackled by the charming beauty of a woman, by her solitary embraces and talks of so-called love, and by the sweet words of his small children. Thus he forgets his real identity. In this verse, the words strinam asatinam indicate that womanly love is just to agitate the mind of man. Actually, in the material world, there is no love. Both the woman and the man are interested in their sense gratification. For sense gratification, a woman creates an illusory love, and the man becomes enchanted by such false love and forgets his real duty. When there are children as a result of such a combination, the next attraction is to the sweet words of the children. The love of the woman at home and the talk of the children make one a secure prisoner, and thus he cannot leave his home. Such a person is termed in Vedic language a grihamedi, which means one whose center of attraction is home. Grihastha refers to one who lives with family, wife, and children, but whose real purpose of living is to develop Krishna consciousness. One is therefore advised to become a grihastha and not a grihamedi. The grihastha's concern is to get out of family life, created by illusion, and enter into real family life with Krishna. Whereas the grihamedi's business is to repeatedly chain himself to so-called family life, in one life after another, and perpetually remain in the darkness of Maya. So here we're dealing with, here's a few chapters in the Bhagavatam, then we'll bring this perspective to the front. Most of the time is talking about the technical process, the devotional element, processes that are, encouraging, or things that people have done that are, a difficulty. But this chapter then describes the difficulties of the living entity that they'll fall into when they're working within the material sphere. So whatever is said here is true. Now the difficulty comes in now, how do you apply this, right? Because the truth is never a problem. Truth is always, means actual truth, means truth meaning connected to Krishna. That's always good, always uplifting, always very valuable. But now in the application of this truth, how one sees the truth, then that becomes the point where things work well or not. So in here, then we see as the Grihamedi, his goal, his inspiration is that love, that close interaction with the wife, the sweet sounds of the voices of the children, all these small little things. They're not big things, they're small things. But very hard to come by. So these small things, these are what binds him, because these are his goal. He wants to see the wife happy, the children, all these different things. So when they're there, he's happy. When they're not there, he's very frustrated. And as time goes and the relationships mature, children grow up, then there's a problem. Because then those things that were actually why he's working disappear or fade away. So the important element, so that's one aspect. The other aspect is, okay, as devotees, then we're not supposed to be involved in this way. There's no attachment, sense gratification, these things. So unfortunately, means that having that understanding and having that determination, that's very good. Unfortunately, there's a thought that the form of the Grihastha ashram will actually look different. That's the mistake in this department. Because we see here, we're not discussing here sadhana, we're not discussing other aspects of life, we're discussing the actual reason someone is a grihastha. So unfortunately, devotees in the past and even at present, then they feel that if they're going to follow this, out of a sense of either duty, religiousness, or some conviction, then they feel the form of the household life changes. And so these things don't exist. And at the same time is then, if that works out for them, great. If it doesn't work out for them, like it doesn't for most, then the problem will come as they will then decide that the form that is practiced by the Grihambedi, that's actually the most practical. So then what happens is that one actually gets more committed to the Grihambedi ashram, or let's say lack of ashram, but whatever, than an actual unconscious Grihambedi. Because the unconscious Grihambedi, he will be spontaneously acting in that capacity. He will be committed to it and doing, but he's not actually thinking about it. He doesn't have a philosophy. He has no philosophy. He just thinks this is what you have to do to become happy. Just by his own attractions and attachments, he has situated himself in that position. And because those attachments are his primary drive, then that is why he is there. His motives to be there, his whole reason he works to be there. But there's no philosophy. But a devotee who then misunderstands the application and takes up this Grihambedi position, right? And you noticed in here, it didn't mention one sinful activity. So never for a second think Grihambedi means that they're performing all sinful activities. Because later on we'll see, when it's talking about the Grihambedi, how his wife becomes more and more beautiful to him as the day for the Garbhodan Samskar comes. Only pious people do Garbhodan Samskar. Grihambedi can be the most pious person in the universe. Grihambedi means he's not God conscious. Not that he's sinful, nasty, stinky, all that. That's the easy way to do it. Yes, all those guys are the Grihamedes, and I'm the upstanding Grihasta. Grihasta is a state of mind. If these things are the prominent element in your life, that's why you're doing these things, that's a Grihamedi. It's that simple. Grihasta means something beyond that. So that was on the side. So is that phone call. So, now, so now if a devotee in misapplication of Grihasta life takes up the Grihamedi mentality, they'll have to do it with a philosophy, because it's a philosophy that they're supposed to be a Grihasta. So if they're finding that difficult and don't want to act in that way, they'll have to create a philosophy to be a Grihamedi. But that philosophy, of course, contains the elements that it's not a Grihamedi ashram. It's actually, very upstanding, practical, down-to-earth, not fanatic, real, dealing with the moment, what we can do in this, age, and surrounded by this, that, blah, 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 like this. So, you hear it regularly, every day, especially when this chapter is going. I'm sure this is a great conversation in the community, like that. It's probably the major conversation will be going on. This one said this, that one said that, so many things. So now, that brings us to the point, well, then what does it mean, the Grihasta ashram? What does it look like? We will see is that if this is coming after actually a most appropriate example of true Grihasta ashram, and that's Kardama and Devahuti. So after describing what's real, then you discuss what are the problems, right? That's the method of education. First is what is real, what is solid, what's standard, what's normal, what's without exception. Once that's understood, because then you have a very clear understanding of the topic, then you discuss what are exceptions or what are abnormalities. Right? That's always the way we work. When we have committees that start with the exceptions and the doubts and that's not real education, that's real knowledge. You can't get anywhere with that. You have to start with what is real, what is the standard. Then, when that's accepted, then you go into it, okay, to apply the standard, we're going to come up against exceptions. We're going to come up against aberrations. So that's discussed after. But it's based on the platform of discussing what is real. You already know what's real, so then you can discuss where it went wrong. But if you start with where it goes wrong, all you'll know is how to make things go wrong. You'll become the expert on, the world expert on how things go wrong. You'll never become good at anything. You'll never become good at that subject. So, Kardama Muni then, he's a brahmachari. He wants to be absorbed in God consciousness. He's very serious about that, so therefore he's a very good brahmachari. As a good brahmachari, therefore he will make a good grihasta. He's seeing in his brahmachari practice that in the back of the mind there's always that element at some point that he wants to, he has the desire to experience the grihasta environment. So then in that, then he's praying to the Lord that a suitable person will be there that he can practice this Grihasta ashram with. There'll be the proper results, meaning God consciousness, and he will be able to pull himself out of the illusion of the material world, that of I and mine, and be able to situate himself on the transcendental platform. That is his goal. So we see now, in going about it, praise the Lord, appropriate marriage is made, right? It's not just anybody, it's someone who actually matches properly. Then in that, he makes the standards that simple Krishna consciousness is the standard, but then having seen that his wife is comfortable with that, then he arranges whatever are her needs, right? Based on that principle of, God consciousness. And they spend their life, they have so many children, I think they have 10, and everything works very nice. So we never see anything in here, of rough, dry, all these kind of things. No aberrations of the modern society. And so then everything, he is very satisfied, and his wife is satisfied, and at the end of the day, his children are very Krishna conscious. In fact, they are Krishna, right? And Krishna is conscious, so Kapila Muni is Krishna conscious, or a conscious Krishna, yes. He knows who he is, right? I think it was once, I'm not sure who it was, but generally these stories, it's always, I think, Shatadanya, but he was in the room, right? And so he was with Prabhupada, and praising something. Prabhupada, you're this, you're that. You're the greatest, you're this and that. And at one point, Prabhupada just stopped, gave him that look, just, stop. So, okay, it's enough. And then he said, I know who I am. So you don't have to go on with all this stuff, like that. He was the servant. He's supposed to clean the room, right? Clean the room. We know who we are. That's why. So Kapila Muni knows who he is, so like that. So, but the element is God-conscious children, wife is God-conscious, he's God-conscious, everything is working very nicely. So that would mean then the Grihasta understands the field he's working in. The field is that of attachment. The field is that of illusion. Because the idea that this is my family is not real, because if it's your family, it's yours. But how long do you have them? Right? They're borrowed from somewhere else. You can't say it's mine, because the problem is after some time, everybody goes away, including yourself. And then again together, a new family. So then what happens in here is that one can taste the elements of the family affection and interaction, but it's temporary. So it's actually illusory that it's real. And in tasting these things, the tendental tendency is to not be God conscious. Well, real Grihasta life, what basically means, most of the spiritual world, practically all of it. There's only a few people who are not, like Narad Muni and a few others. Then they're Grihastas, they experience family interaction, but it's all centered around God. It's all connected. So that's real family life that Prabhupada is talking about. So this is a reflection of that, so it's not real. But in it, because one has that idea that this is something of real, of substance, and something that's very important for us to taste, then the devotee being involved in it, the form of it will be always the same. But with knowledge and understanding, he understands that this is not the actual position. So one must perform those activities. One is in family life for these things. Anybody says it's not that, then either it's very mercenary or they're in total illusion. So the closeness, the intimacy with the wife, the sweetness, niceness of the children, this is the rewards in family life. If those aren't there, then what else is there? Somebody washes clothes or does the dishes or that. Your mom can do that, right? The Italians have figured that out, right? So they stay at home. They don't get married. They're the lawyer. They make lots of money, but their mom takes it. No one cooks better than your mom, right? She knows everything. She knows where you like your socks. So it's fine. It's like that, So they've figured that out. But the point is that it's not going to work if you don't approach it in God consciousness. So the problem comes is we think, as the Mayavadis do, God consciousness means something other than the forms you see of this world. So therefore, if things are pleasant and nice in family life in the world, then a Krishna conscious family life must be very dry and boring, and then that will be spiritual. But that's, any Mayavadi will tell you that. But as we see as Devahuti and Kardama, it's not dry, it's not boring. But it's God conscious. So the difference between the Griya Medi and the Grihasta is not in the activities they're doing, right? Not in the experiences they're getting, but whether that is the goal of life, as in the Griya Medi, or if that is simply the medium for understanding the difference between matter and spirit, and the goal is God consciousness of the grihasta. But the form is going to look the same, right? One may complain about this, but does the form change? If a devotee, boils a potato for Krishna, or a karmi boils a potato for Krishna, what's the difference? Other than purity. One is God conscious doing for Krishna, one is doing for themselves. The form looks the same. This is the major mistake devotees make. But, of course, it's natural to make that mistake, because without actually being conscious, without being thoughtful, then being involved in family life and these things happening, that pleasantness, that intimacy, the sweetness, then they'll become distracted from Krishna consciousness. So to maintain Krishna consciousness, then they make everything very nice, dry, and boring. And by doing that, then they maintain some semblance of God consciousness. So since God consciousness is the most important, then okay, that's better than becoming completely distracted and not being absorbed in Krishna. But as long as one can do that the rest of your life and be satisfied that it wasn't worth it anyway, there was nothing there, and then at the end of life go back to Godhead. But if having done that for many years, 5, 10, 20, 30 years, then you're going to say, well, this doesn't work and I got to be practical and real and all this. And so now I'm just being, I'm being myself, I'm true to myself and all these kind of, blithers. Then you've done yourself a great disservice. I mean, of course, the devotional service you've done in your life will last you. It'll be eternally there unless you take further steps to negate it. But otherwise, it'll be there. But the path one's taking is the path of birth and death. So what I'm talking about is extremely real. Extremely real. Like that. When I look around at the Grihastha ashram, basically, this is all I see. Very few actually understand God-conscious Grihastha life because they think it has to be separate from regular Grihastha life. Grihastha life is a situation. Then you can be a actual God-conscious Grihastha or be a Grihamaiti in that situation. Just like we say, cooking is cooking. Then you can either be God-conscious or you can be materialistic. But the preparation is going to come out the same. Now, it's just a matter of whether that's your goal in life or whether that's a process you're using to come to the actual goal in life. That's the difference. So these kind of things is very, very important, that this chapter is here not for the brahmacharis and sannyasis to get up there with that little smirk on their face, and then this is their chance. They can officially speak badly about the grihastas, and then the grihastas can go away and start speaking badly about the sannyasis, what they know anyway, and start this whole ashramic war. That's not what it's for. This is for the brahmacharis, sannyasis, and the grihastas to understand actually what is life, what's going on here. We don't belong here. This is not our place. So since we identify with it, we're here, then why not, like the residents of the spiritual world, be God-conscious in whatever situation you're in? They're grihastas, they're God-conscious, so why not do that here? That's what's being offered. But what's being pointed out is where are the points where you forget God-consciousness? Right? You go to work, you make your money, you bring it home, take care of the family, protect, make sure it's this and that, the kids don't, fall off the chair, this and that, and then you think, job well done. But that's not, you're looking in the wrong place. Maya doesn't get you there. She can get you there, but that's the easy thing, The thing where she's getting is that these things, and he enjoys gives his heart and senses to a woman. He enjoys solitary embraces, talking with her, enchanted by the sweet words of the children. This is where Maya gets you. What grihastha is looking there? So if he looks there, then he won't engage in anything that comes close to this. Or if he engages in this, then he has a philosophy that, it's fine and I'm not fanatic. Or he's an illusion and doesn't even know it's happening. Right? So that's the whole point, is that this is the spot. And without this chapter, how would you know that? Because how much of the day he actually is able to express, verbally his affection, or that the wife actually does use some charms, or there is a moment of a solitary embrace or talking with her, and that means not yelling and screaming, or just pleasant, free talk. How often do the kids say sweet words? Right? And for how long? Up to about the age of 2, and then after that, then it's, something else. And even in that, that's between crying, how you say, vomiting, passing stool, this, that, sleeping. So after you look at it, how many moments are there? Not very many. And because that's what's being looked for so much, these are the relief to everything else. It's not looked at. And we're afraid if we do look at it, we won't have it. But God consciousness is the only way you can become God conscious and the material needs are taken care of. If you try to directly take care of the material needs, it won't happen. It just won't. Because you may get the experience, you may be happy while the experience is there, but the next moment the experience is gone. And where is the satisfaction? It's not there. Where's the happiness? It's not there. Well, in Krishna consciousness, then when it happens, you have the happiness. But when it goes away, you have satisfaction. Satisfaction lasts. Happiness, by definition, is temporary. Because it means removing a pain. Right? You've been away, so now you get together, there's some close dealings. It's removing the pain of separation, or, that hasn't been talking, she's upset, and then finally, it worked out, and then after so much time, then she's nice, so then you're relieved. So there's happiness. So you're relieved from that, but then she's nice, then that moment will be happiness, but then what's the next moment? Because you're not relieving yourself of that pain. So how will you get happiness? That's why then after that, then it's something else. Go eat something, watch the television, go talk to your friends. It's something else has to come up. Right? Because as a result of an activity, that will give you happiness. This is definition, it's science. So that would mean then you should be left with satisfaction. And satisfaction will only come from the mode of goodness, which means it will come from knowledge, which means it comes from proper Krishna conscious practices. Right? So when we say you be Krishna conscious, everything will work out, we mean it. But that doesn't mean that if you don't know how to cook and you follow the recipe, that if it doesn't work, it's the recipe's problem. So remember that, is that the Shastra tells us how to deal with Grihastha ashram. And if in following it, it doesn't work, don't blame the Shastra. That means we didn't apply it right, so then try again until you get it right. Because if you try any other path, then there's another chapter that tells how you're going to die. And how the family members are going to be sitting around with these long faces, and then behind the scenes what they're actually thinking. So don't think that chapter is not, for us. Like that. Because it looks good. But that's the only thing. It just looks good. So that's the idea. It looks good, so deal with the looks. Deal with that. That means you are looking at the superficialness, so deal with the superficialness properly according to the philosophy and culture. Then you'll see it as actually superficialness in realization. But at the same time as you taste it. Just like if I want to tell, I have 2 preparations. I want to tell if they're good or not. How do I tell? Right? You have to taste them. Right? Unless they're really bad, then just by looking. But you have to taste them. So that means in other words, you hear about Grihastha life and you go, yeah, okay, that's not for me. Then there's no problem. But if there's some doubt about it, or there's some interest in it, even though you know it's not good, but there's still an interest, then what does that mean? It's by tasting it in God consciousness, then you'll get something. Otherwise, if you have no standard when you taste something, how will you know if it's good or not? Right? Now, you take it. It means when's the last story that what we hear about practically, where we hear about really nice male-female interaction, in the Western culture, right? Huh? Okay, so therefore you have an idea of it's there. But otherwise, in general, what's lauded, I don't know if there's any books about your parents or, great movies or dramas, you could call it My Parents. It might be good, like that. Yeah, Romeo and Juliet. So that's one where you hear, what is it, Paris and what was her name? I can't remember her name. They fought for 10 years in Troy over. A few of them where you hear that it's very nice, but you never, what happened after them, Paris and them, they disappeared off into the desert. Yeah, they generally end with death, or they just or if you want to keep it a little above board, you say they lived happily ever after, but you never see the next day, like that, when Cinderella's, yelling, what happened to my glass slippers, like that. I left them right here and all that, like that, and then the guy, So you don't hear about those things. So the point is that the Malechas aren't known for great family interaction. They're just not known for it. It's just like that. Individuals may have it, but if they have, what does it go back to? Pure materialism? That's why they're so good at it? It always will go back to something religious. Any good quality that's there in the world is coming from religion. So some tradition is there in the family, some other elements, the religious elements, so that's why they're doing it nicely. So it still comes back to religion. So if we think we're going to give up our own religious process, varna ashram, and then be happy in family life, which is a religious, position, how is it going to work? It can't work. It won't work. And therefore, devotees, you read these first verses, and those devotees who have philosophy about grihastha life, it's like, it's like talking directly about them. Remember, this book is not for the karmis. This is for the devotees, this book. Karmis generally don't read this book. Right? So we should always remember that. No, okay, here's the chapter for the, nasty, stinky, smelly karmis. No, this is the chapter for the devotees. Right? So, bottom line is that the points of proper dealings means the man, he's giving his heart and senses to a woman for those very nice moments, for the solitary embraces and this nice talking and all that. So, that's why he's doing it, and that's the end. Rather than, this is your method of dealing in grihastha life, means the affections must be there. One's dealing with the senses must be there and not somewhere else. And so one is fixed in that position. The wife will reciprocate very nicely like this. But the point is to understand that this is God's method of dealing in grihastha ashram. So that's just dealing grihastha ashram. Then there's dealing with God. Right? The residents that Nanda Baba and Mother Jashoda deal nicely with each other. Right? They're affectionate in their dealings. They're pleasant. They've been living together eternally. They're going to be living together eternally. So they might as well, deal nicely, right? Right? Otherwise, you want to spend eternity, like that, not working it out. So they're dealing nice. So, but that's there. But is that the focus? No, that's just your situation. Then there's God consciousness. Right? You want to worship Krishna, then you have to consider the environment you're in. If you're in the deity room, you don't get out your kartals and wampers and mridanga and djembe and your what do you call it? Accordion and all that, and start up a rip-roaring kirtan. You're in the deity room. You do that in the temple room. Right? And if you're in the temple room, you don't start getting out your bell and lamp and achanaka. You don't do that. So situation is important. So you have to deal with the situation appropriately. So that's grihastha ashram. Your situation of serving Krishna is grihastha ashram. That's what they do in the spiritual world. You want to go there, do what they do. It got them there. It keeps them there. It works. Right? So grihastha is the situation we're in. You deal with it appropriately for its situation, but it's not the goal. The goal is God consciousness. It works. It's worked for everyone in this book, and there's a lot of grihasthas described in this book. A lot of them, from all different situations. Why? Because that's what most people are. So you need the widest variety of examples. Brahmachari, you just need Narad Muni. Brahmacharis are satisfied. They don't need variety. Right? One brahmachari, good, is enough. If there's more, great. Right? Grihasthas need variety, because you have to say, well, that's not exactly, our situation. So you have a variety so you can see. Right? And then you put it together. If you're so unique, then take this from this one, that one from that one, this one from this one, and put it together. So that's the idea. Otherwise, then the problem is you can't get out of the material world. Right? Prabhupada mentions that the brahmachari is 50% of the way back to Godhead, because he's not interested really in the material world. He's distracted by it, of course. He's worried about his dhoti and this and that and the border on his chadar and his neck beads and, like this thing, kind of like that. But that's minor. Those aren't the really things that really bind the heart up, right? But it's still a problem. But Prabhupada said the grihastha, in that mentality where he's absorbed in the grihastha ashram, there's only a 25% chance of getting back to Godhead. So it's slightly different. So that's why the grihastha ashram has to be applied according to the principles of God consciousness. Then it becomes an equivalent medium of the brahmacharya, the sannyasa ashram. Just more trouble, right? More emotional anxiety, but the same medium. Brahmachari has less attachments. He has less to deal with and engage in Krishna's service, but it works. Grihastha has more attachments, more paraphernalia and facilities and situations, so he has more opportunity to engage those. It's because it's by engaging them in the Lord's service that they go away. You don't engage them, they don't go away. Right? The man's attached to talking with women, but he's being Krishna conscious, so he doesn't talk with his wife and this and that. But what happens? He ends up talking with some other lady. Right? Why? Because he's so religious with his wife, he doesn't interact, doesn't talk, doesn't, touch her, embrace her, nothing like this. So what's he doing? He's doing that with another lady. Like that. So, does this make sense? So the point is that this is the place of interaction, but that's engaged according to Krishna conscious principles. Then the need to have that kind of relationship is no longer there. But according to the Vedic principles, that's why then duty is so important, because when he doesn't have to interact with his wife because he needs that interaction, what's to keep him taking care of the wife? Because the situation affords it. Duty, all right? But that duty is not this Western dry duty. It's being done for Krishna. It's personal, so it's interactive. Like that, right? Kids, they need to be with the other kid. Or the mom, let's pick even a better example here. The mom needs to be with the kid, right? So how much of the time is she yelling at the kid and frustrated with the kid? Sometimes a lot, right? A friend of the family who likes kids, do they have to be with your kid? No, they just like kids. So do you ever see them yelling and screaming at the kid? No, they're always nice and pleasant and happy and jovial. Why? Because they have no attachment. But they know how to deal with the kid. Right? Well, the parent is attached, that has to have that interaction with the kid. And by that, they may be blinded, so they may use the science, or because of their frustration, they may not use the science. And then so how much of the time are they frustrated? So much of the time. This is a direct example of how you deal according to duty with the situation. And if you're not attached, you actually get better results than if you're attached. That's the reality. It may not be popular because we have our own Western definitions. I don't mean Krishna conscious, I mean Western definitions of what is happiness, what is interaction, what's relationship, what's attachment, what's detachment. But unfortunately, those Western definitions don't necessarily have much to do with the Vedic. and so they fail. So here it's being told how it works. Therefore, it's told how it's being working. Yes. Yeah, basically.
I have one question regarding, since the same principle of dealing with external considerations apply to the other nations too, in minor scale, different percentage as you mentioned, could you elaborate at least in this principle, the formula that you worked out on form and principle?
I mean,
on the other nations, for instance, because we find also.
oh, okay, yeah, no, it's the same in all of them, but one always has to remember, even if others have, why is it easy to see? Because it's obvious. Brahmacharis don't have a social, much of a social situation, so they don't have that sense necessarily as much of privacy. So whatever is wrong with them, you see. Grihastas have a very strong sense of privacy and all that. So even though there's a lot more that's going wrong, you'll see it less. So in public, they can do very nicely. But the brahmacharis are in public or in their own ashram, it's the same for them. So it's easier to see the faults. So then to use the element, so, this is about the grihastas, what about everybody else? That's fine as long as that applies to the individual. But if someone is a grihasta, then they should apply it to themselves. Don't worry about the brahmacharis, like that. They'll work it out. If you're in a position to train them in that, great. But if you actually can train them, then that means you are actually a good grihasta. A good grihasta could train a brahmachari because he was one. Right? But if he's not a good grihasta, he won't be able to train brahmacharis. He should never for a second fool himself. All right? Yogurt is made from yogurt. Right? So brahmacharis come from brahmacharis. So if he's a grihasta brahmachari, then he can make brahmacharis. Right? That's how the Vedic system works. So you have Brahmins who are qualified brahmacharis who have graduated, gotten married, they run a gurukul and train more brahmacharis. Like that. Also you see is those brahmacharis who then don't get married, they open, ashrams or mutts, and they also train brahmacharis. But the common point was they were all brahmacharis. Because otherwise you can point out as, sannyasis and position there, then they're respected by everyone, that can go to their head. But it generally goes to the head less than the sweet words and embraces of a woman. Because otherwise, if not, then why is it some of these big swamis, big gurus, they were big. The ones nowadays are not big like then. They would leave all that for the secretary. Right, they drop all that. Nobody knows who they are. No one cares who they are. They even badmouth them. But he'll leave all that for those solitary embraces and talking with her. So that bottom line must always be remembered. Right? So these things are there. They're an annoyance. They're a disturbance. They're obvious because it's out in the open, because there is no, as such, private life. So those will happen. Gurus will do this and that. But we always have to remember is that everybody will do the same thing. Material consciousness is the same consciousness. It's not different in the grihasta or brahmachari sannyasi. It's what ashram works for your conditioned nature to engage in Krishna's service. So the brahmachari sannyasis, no one said they're perfect. They're using brahmachari and sannyas as the medium to become God conscious, while someone else is using the grihasta ashram or vanaprastha ashram as their medium to become God conscious. So it doesn't matter, it's what medium you use.
Practical consequences, let's say, since the majority of the population is also the grihasta ashram.
Yes. Are the major gurus are grihastas only because the majority of people are grihastas, but not that they work it out and say, okay, all you gurus here, okay, so since 90% are married, so you, 9 out of 10, you get married and you can stay. No, it's just the way it happens. So this whole thing of that politicizing gurus, that they have to be grihastas, they have to be women, they have to be from the backward caste, they have to be this, that, otherwise we'll have reservations, out of how many gurus we have, so many have to be women, so many have to be from this class and that class, Like, have you ever thought about it? How many Inuit gurus do we have? Have you heard of one Eskimo guru? Now, I mean, isn't there something wrong here? Like that. How about any, ethnic North American, like that, do we have any, like that, So like that, and not only that, we just, what was it? We just lost our, one black guru, so now, now we have a problem, So this is not, political should not be the way that we approach. It's a matter of who's qualified. They do it. If they're a grihasta, they're not. What does it matter? Right? Devotee is a devotee. So they have the knowledge, they have the ability, they have the devotion. What do we care? It just doesn't matter. Is that okay? Yeah? Here, yes.
That's it, Maharaj. I've always felt that someone who went through the whole Vedic system, the ashrams, would have more realization about how to apply the Shastra so that he could give other married people access to the Shastra by his own practical experience. In our history, it's a pretty brief history, so we haven't had so many people who have done that.
No, but still 30 years is enough to get through Grihastha Ashram.
How many do we have? Successful graduates of the Grihastha Ashram who are able to
Apply it. Not so many. Why? Because they're not doing what Bhagavatam is saying. No, the Grihasthas.
what access are they being, what good guidance are they receiving?
The Shastra is there. They're not.
How to apply it. And my faith is with somebody more, frankly, who has been there.
But do you know one person who's been there? So therefore, that's the problem. And so the point is what's your alternative? Alachua? So therefore, then, that's not going to work. The point is like this. If someone needs to be a grihasta, means that's where they are in their training, like that. If someone doesn't need to be a grihasta, means they've already done it. You forget that part. If you have a person who, when they hear all these things about grihasta life, positive, negative, they learn the technique, and then it's kind of like, well, no, I don't need that. That means they've already done it. They did all that in their last life, so they do have something valuable to give. Because the point is then more important is, do they understand God consciousness and how it applies to human society? That's more important. Because otherwise, as far as the science goes, it's there, but I have basically hardly any grihasta men I've met will actually understand that the reason that any real problems in the grihasta ashram, as far as just its running, not a matter of being distracted from Krishna, comes from their false ego, that their masculine ego, that they actually is feminine, that they're trying to make into masculine. They're trying to bend a feminine mentality and call it masculine, rather than take up actual masculine mentality. And I've talked to many men, I mean many, and this is the one point. You can talk so many other things, but this one point, they can't see. They just can't see, because they're the man. But them being the man, they do everything that Krishna, who actually is the man, never does. Think about how Krishna deals with his women. And he's pretty good at it, right? He's got 16,108, wives in Dwarka, right? And he's got millions of gopis in Vrindavan. They have no problem. Women have no problem. Even the ones on the heavenly planets, everybody likes Krishna. Why? Because he actually is male, right? So, and yeah, there's no problem there. He'll give his wife Krishna, but but who is he giving Krishna to? Like, let's say you have a duck. How are you going to give Krishna to a duck? What would be the way to do it? They did it in Regent Park. They gave him prasad. Okay, why? Because he's a duck. So that means if you're going to give Krishna consciousness to your wife or your daughter or your mother, it means you have to consider that they are women. So if you don't know what a woman is, how will you give Krishna consciousness? So the man is so busy trying to establish himself as a man, he never has time to actually consider what a woman is and what he's dealing with. And I'm talking to you right there. That's the bare bones bottom line why our marriages break up, right there. The man doesn't know what a man is, doesn't know what a woman is, and has no idea how to deal. All they do is they take a few points from here. The man leads, the woman follows. You know, the woman serves. Are there any more? Or that's enough, right? Yeah. So that very much, then you take that and apply that. Thank you. You apply that to notice, like that, because and all these things, the doubt comes up, I've seen in these descriptions on the men's side. You know what I'm saying? When we're describing these things, the women don't have a problem with it because they know that is the problem. But they're practical, so they just live with it. Well, the man has this whole ideology about a man and his machismo and all this kind of stuff. And so that is what actually is the problem. Because they can't understand that you can be gentle and be powerful at the same time. It said here is that, the previous point, it said, Prabhupada's saying, it said that it's the same amount of energy and effort that it takes to manage a small family. It's the same amount that it takes to run an empire, right? He just said it in a few verses back. What is it? He just said that. It's interesting how Bhagavatam is so elusive that you just looked at it and then you can't see it. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. It said it's easier to maintain a great empire than to maintain a small family. And it's true, because you can apply that machismo stuff to the material, other things more easily, but you can't apply it to women. It doesn't work for them. Like that. But because that's all there is around, then that's what they're going to choose. You know, they have to, it means it's just like this. Let's say you need apples and there's a whole bunch of apples, but none of them are standard and there are different varieties of going bad. Then you'll pick the one that's the least bad, you know? And then they have the idea, I'll take it home, wash it, cut out the bad parts, and I'll have an okay apple. So they spend their whole life trying to get rid of those bad parts, and the man is thinking, they're just harassing, they're never submissive, why are they always nagging? Because those nagging is trying to get rid of the qualities in a man that aren't masculine. That's all they're doing. So you name me the men who understands that. And then I'll say is, you get the information from wherever you can get it. And if you can find that grihasta, that dream grihasta that knows what I'm talking about here, get it from them. If not, then you take it from where you can get it, because otherwise I haven't seen it. I just don't see it. I mean, actually, don't see it. If I want to see it, I have to go outside into the Hindu society, some of these others, some old traditional. They have more understanding, but because our devotees are very committed to anti-tradition, anti-authority, their scope to enter into this, let alone the Bhagavatam, they can't even enter into human society where it starts from. Because to follow this, you have to be a human. To be a grihasta, you have to be human. And human being starts with respect of authority. It's the first thing that Manu deals with. Respect of the Shastras, respect of the Brahmins, respect of the teacher, respect of the parents. And that is something that is absolutely lacking in our society. It's not seen as a value at all. It's just not seen. So without that, you can't even discuss human life. And that's why you don't see it. Because they're not behaving in Grihastha ashram. Actually, it's Grihasthas, because Grihastha is human. So human means you're dealing with feminine nature there. The animals, they deal with it, but it's just spontaneous because they're just working on emotions. But the working on emotions doesn't work in the human platform. You have to know what you're doing. Women know how to be women, right? Some little training, they know what to do. But men, we're jivas are feminine. We have to be trained what a man is. right? The jivas who are in feminine bodies just have to be themselves. But the jivas in masculine bodies have to be trained what a man is. So if they think it's going to come spontaneous, yeah, then you're going to get the rough, tough guy, like that, and that kind of mood. And it's always, they need some time and attention. No, it's not Krishna conscious, a waste of my time. Then why did you get married? So it goes along with it. You buy a car and then complain that you got to put petrol in it, you got to put oil in it, you have to change the tires, you got to get it serviced. But that's what it means. So any good car owner knows that's what you have to do. Bad car owners, like our temples, they don't know this. They think because it's Krishna's, it'll go on its own. So the men in our society think, the ladies should, stop tripping and just be God conscious. No, but they're ladies. So they have to be dealt with on that platform. We say, well, it's not, that's material. But then getting married is as material as it gets. Because you're not marrying souls, you're marrying gross and subtle bodies. And even that, technically, you're only marrying the gross body because the subtle body will go away with you. So actually, all you're doing is that, but in that, then there's a connection because you're an individual, you have a subtle body, those are shared. So it's just marrying dead matter. So you can't get any grosser than that. So it's not fair to, banter these things around according to just to win an argument. Like that, if we're dealing with material, we're dealing with material. Now learn how to deal with it. You work with a knife, you can't use it any way you like. You have to hold the handle. You have to keep it forward. You have to keep the blade down if you want to cut. And you can say, well, why do I have to, all these rules and this and that? That's just the way it is. And if you don't follow it, you will get cut, or nothing will happen. Your potato will sit there and nothing will work. So Grihastha Ashram's the same. It has the same, and in fact, it has more rules than a knife. But Westerners hate rules. They hate being... They don't understand that rules make something work. The more sophisticated the thing, the more rules. Less sophisticated, less rules. Brahmacharyasam, not so sophisticated, less rules. Grihasthashram, sophisticated, many rules. But we don't want those rules, so that's why we can't learn. But it goes back to, it's not a matter of just, the things, how to practice. It's a matter of the fundamentals of just being a human being, accepting authority, which is not popular in our society right now. Right? It's not popular. As soon as the authority, Guru's this, GBC that, this, that, it's the way it is.
It's a modal challenge because it's hard to come to the mode of goodness unless you are obedient.
Yes, you have to. But point is passion gives pain. Ignorance gives, also very lasting kind of dullness. So if you want to be happy in Grihastha life, you only have one solution, come to the mode of goodness. And how is a Mlechan Yamana going to do that? Only by chanting Hare Krishna, right? A pious person, that's born, let's say, in the Indian culture here, then they may be born into a family that works in the mode of goodness. So they could be a good Grihastha and not be God conscious. Technically they'll be a Griyameti. But they could follow the rules and be happy, go their whole life. Their kids grow up, they become nice. Their wife, everything's nice for them because they're pious. Like that. We're not pious, so we need, without chanting, there's no question of the mode of goodness. So that means if the sadhana is not strong, you can't be a good Grihastha. And the point is it's not more time given to family life gets more result. You sit with your wife all day, you'll get half an hour of full attention. You come home and you're only home an hour, then you have to go out for something, you'll get half an hour. You're home half an hour, you'll get half an hour. So it doesn't matter if it's 24 hours, that you'll only get the same amount of attention. Because if it's your all day, then the woman thinks, well, then she'll just get into preliminaries. And then when it'll come, this and that, and do this first, and that. And then after so much of that happy, or the day's ending and there's not much time left, then that'll happen. If you only have an hour, that's all that there is. So therefore, preliminaries have to fit within half an hour. It's just the science. It's the way they function. That's just feminine nature. It's a science. But the man thinks because I'm married, I know everything. It's a disease.
And it's important we study Shastra because you say chanting Hare Krishna is the only way. But the proper mood for chanting or anything
Comes from Shastra. That's why it's first. But you have to practice it. In other words, the knowledge is there, then you practice it. So you have the knowledge from the Shastra, and then you practice it by chanting and this, and then applying it in Grihastha life. So chanting, temple programs, that's direct devotional service. The Grihastha elements, those are indirect devotional service. But Krishna mentions in the second canto, direct or indirect, both have to be done. Whatever you value in your life, that has to be seen as Krishna and connected to Krishna. He doesn't say other things that aren't of value to you. What's value, that you have to connect. So we'll connect things like our chanting and time like that, but we don't necessarily connect what's of value. Like that. So that's where we fall short. So we can learn from that. And so the point is wherever you get it. Narad Muni, most all directions in the Shastra about women are being expressed by women, right? That way no one can say, well, that's the men's opinion. And a lot of the times you find that the women are talking because Narad Muni is asking the questions, right? He's asking, what's the nature of women, how do they behave, and this and that. One, he's a brahmachari, so he understands it, so he can be careful and all that. At the same time as the whole society works on that, the whole cosmic creation works on the masculine and feminine principle. So you get it from authority, like that. And so like this, then all these things that are in society, much of the things that we're talking about, Urvasi is coming here, in the Bhagavatam. But in the other Puranas, it's, Narad Muni talking to Parvati or Ramba Devi or different personalities. And then you find out, what is there. So it's a science. Then the art is an application. So yes, you can hear the science from the brahmachari sannyasis who understand these things. But the art of application, that then is always best that you get from a grihastha who has understood that science, applied the science as the art. Then you'll get the best detail. Like that, because they've dealt with it for 20, 30 years, so they can, the subtleties of things they'll get. The others can know the science, but the science has to be applied. That's the art. So that you get from a grihastha. But the science of a grihastha, get from there. For brahmachari sannyasa, get from there, wherever it can be gotten. Because it's a big mistake to think that you can't get the science. Science is facts, right? And since masculine means Krishna, feminine means his creation, that means anybody who's actually absorbed in the understanding of the philosophy and how the creation works can tell you how grihastha ashram works, if they apply that knowledge in that place. The science of it, that's not the big deal. It is, but I'm just saying in this case it's not the point of contention, because if you know philosophy, how you don't know how it works? Because we can take this and then put it into philosophy. We could take these same statements and make it into philosophy. You know what I'm saying? Because it's masculine and feminine, so it's the same principle. But now, the art of how do you give the heart and how do you give the senses to the woman, that then is there. The science we can tell. But the art then, someone who's done it, then you can get. And that then you probably have to use the process of the bee. You get a little bit here and there. Because somebody has applied it here and this works nice, someone has applied it there, it's worked nice, somewhere else like this. Yes. Yes. Yes, we have a history. We have enough time to have applied it, but as from what I've seen in the grihasthas I've talked to, no one's interested because they think that their little bit of success in their art is enough. Like that. And then they don't notice that it's falling apart on them. Because women like variety and they just work it into a little system that they do 2 or 3 things, They come home, they know what to say, they know what to buy, this, that. It's good for a few years, but after that, every year you come home with the same thing. They want something different. And then he thinks he's doing fine and she's getting bored. And that's just science. Krishna expanded the creation for variety. The inherent nature of the feminine nature is variety. There's a purport where Prabhupada just says that. It's variety. Radharani cooks for Krishna. She never cooks the same twice. So that means every time Krishna deals with her, something's got to be slightly different. The situation. You may say the same thing, but the situation has to be different. Right? Like that. Or the situation's the same, but you have to say something different. You know?
We have to have our own culture. That's why Prabhupada wanted us to build our own culture. Because
Yes.
we grihastas or graduates, alumni, we're all surrounded by passion and ignorance.
Yes.
Very hard. So that's why Prabhupada wanted us to have our own way of our national culture, so we can actually see things as they are.
Yes. Yes, yes. And the most important thing, and understand that we have to have that Varnashram culture, is that it works today just as well as it worked 5,000 years ago. Because it's still God's creation and still God's laws that govern everything. The only difference is consciousness, just like this. You go to the Grihastha house, the kids running around, dressed in, modern clothes and all things like that. And you ask them, well, how come they dress like that? He says, well, because, what can we do? Everybody else does it. Right? And that's okay if they were sitting in Los Angeles. But the devotees I'm just talking about, they live in Mayapur. So everybody around here doesn't dress like that. So they bring it with them. So the reason we can't apply Varnashram, because we say it's not that you can't do it, is simply our own mind. And that's it. No ifs, no ands, and no buts. It's simply our own mind. We want to follow it, we do it. Because the whole point is, hey, so many things don't work, but devotees just do it anyway. You know what I'm saying? How many hippies lived with the Beatles? Just off the street hippies. How many lived with the Beatles? Right? 4 or 5, right? They were devotees. Right. So devotees do things no one else does. So why can't we establish Varnashram? We don't care what anybody else does. We've never cared. We still don't care. We just try to make it politically look like we care, but they don't care. So therefore we can establish our own culture, and that means Vedic culture as Prabhupada gives it, not our own made-up culture, despite what anybody else does. You know what I'm saying? People, the Amish, live like they live. And they couldn't care less. They're living back in the 1850s. They still dress with the same clothes. And that's Western dress, which means it changes every few years. We're wearing, clothes from the spiritual world that they're still wearing it today. But you go to Germany, no one's wearing what the Amish are wearing. Like that. The Mormons, they live in their own world. So they just do these things. Yes.
And reach out.
Of course, because our culture is universal. The Amish culture is not.
We can't reach out successfully, as you suggest, unless we are living our culture.
Yes. You can only give something you have. So the reason we can't give Varnashram is because we don't live it. We live it, you can give it.
We get compromised by the culture.
Yeah. Yes. Okay. I'm just thinking. Okay. We should probably... And we can continue questions afterwards, I'm thinking.
So we have all this wonderful jnana,
Okay.
but more often than not, we find ourselves unable to act on it without the vijnana. So my question is, what are the obstacles in the mind that keep us from progressing from jnana to vijnana?
Vijnana, practice. See, knowledge you have, but unless you practice that knowledge, you won't get Vigyan. Vigyan comes from a practice application of the knowledge you have. So what we do is we don't, and practice means we have to contemplate it. We applied it, it didn't work, so we have to contemplate it more, figure out what went wrong, then then apply it again until it starts to work. So the knowledge we have is actually visible. Then by practicing that will give us Vigyan. We don't contemplate. Because if you contemplate, then you wonder why you're out with a bucket shaking it to get coins to maintain a temple that has no one in it. Yes, okay, so we'll end here. Right? Leaders don't want devotees to think. But the only reason they don't want them to think is they don't think themselves. Like that. And if you want, I'll back it up. Thank you. Thank you. Srila Prabhupada ki, Samaveta Bhaktivinoda ki, Jainatai Gaura Premanandi.